Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the loss of Air India Flight 171. I'm Geoffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say, joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt. Good morning to you, Richard.
And good afternoon to you, Geoffrey.
Absolutely beautiful day here in Perth, Western Australia. Viewers, this episode, as we suggested yesterday, is the top 10 episodes covering the loss of Air India Flight 171. It's episode 223. We have published, in fact, 85 episodes on the crash of Air India Flight 171 on the 12th of June 2025. We've had a total of 3,154,710 views, and the episodes have had a 98.2% like rate as opposed to dislikes. There were a total of 42,070 comments with 154,000 likes. And we should mention that many of those comments have helped us shape these episodes, raised important issues, and they've been part of what has become a global investigation into the loss of Flight 171, which is really unprecedented in aviation. If you want to watch all 85 episodes, it'll take you 37 hours, 53 minutes and 45 seconds. We're not counting, but that's how long it'll take you. Richard, so what are your top 10 episodes on the Air India crash?
We're showing a table with my top 10 episodes. That's just my view. And of course, everyone will have their own preferences. We did 4 key episodes before the preliminary report was published on the 12th of July. And we did an episode on the revelations from the Wall Street Journal on the 17th of July. And that was just after the publication of the report. And since then, we've done quite a few episodes defining the water ingress into the EE Bay, the plausible hypothesis, the fact that in our view it was not the captain, the probable cause, and most recently, deception.
And I think your favourite was Now for the Facts, was it not?
Yeah, the first one we ever did.
Mm.
And I went and looked at it again, and I have to say, uh, um, uh, I do like that more than any other since. So, there you go.
So listen, take us back to that first episode. What did we say back then?
Well, we gave the basic facts of the accident that we knew at that time. Of course, there were very few facts available. And we cautioned against speculation, which was rife in the media and social media. The first episode we brought out 3 days after the accident and 27 days before the preliminary report. But it still is interesting to note how prophetic that first episode was. We talked about the loss of power on takeoff, and the rate of climb was only 896 feet per minute and not the usual 2093 feet per minute. We assumed the flaps 5 were used, which turned out to be correct. Other analysts at the time were claiming the flaps and the slats were wrongly configured. We discussed the possibility of a dual engine failure on takeoff.
Mhm.
We noted the required runway roll was 1,420 meters, but in reality, we said at the time more like 2,600 meters was used. It turns out in the final analysis, the runway roll was 2,227 meters. But that still, of course, hasn't been confirmed by the AAIB in India. We talked about the dust storm on takeoff and the landing gear remaining extended. And I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed watching that episode again. Here we are, 103 days later and 85 episodes later.
Now, for my memory serves me correctly, we also discussed a cover up on the 28th of June before the preliminary report was published. How did we come to that idea? Can you recall?
Yeah, so the cover up on the 28th of June, that's quite early on. The reason we came to that conclusion, firstly, we were appalled that the crash site was cleared
Mm,
um, even before international investigators could visit it. And certainly before the black boxes could be downloaded. We were at the time reliably informed that one of the black boxes was sent to the NTSB in Washington, D.C.,
yeah.
only to be sent back to India shortly after. The Indian authorities declined at the time an offer from ICAO to send one of their investigators to assist, saying it was a breach of protocol. And they subsequently changed their mind. We already discussed back then RAT deployment, landing gear retraction, ACARS data, the ELT, DT, GADS data. We pointed out already the FAA airworthiness directive and Boeing safety alerts on the wastewater leakage into the EE bays. And we concluded the investigation was a shambles. We said there's a lack of transparency and a lack of urgency. In fact, we're quoted in the episode both saying we smelled a rat.
Mm,
And that turned out to be very true.
yeah. The episode that attracted most views, apart from the first episode, was published on the 9th of July, again before the preliminary report and 27 days after the crash. The episode was Fuel Cut Off or Run, and it had 141,000 views. Perhaps you can take us through the dynamics of that episode.
Yeah, so we discuss when and why pilots will operate fuel cutoff switches and when they will not touch the switches. We went through the single and the dual engine inoperative situation and the importance of reaching a safe altitude before running the engine shutdown procedure. And we outlined it takes between 30 and 60 seconds to relight a GNX 1B engine. We also discussed the increased drag from the landing gear remaining extended and from the flaps 5 and from the RAT being deployed.
Mm,
So I think we already back then outlined what we have subsequently uh, gone into more detail with in the plausible hypothesis and the probable cause.
yeah. Now, on the 12th of July 2025, the preliminary report was published. And I think on the 17th of July, we published an episode called Fresh Revelations. Now, what was that one all about, Richard?
Well, at the time, the captain was blamed for deliberately moving both fuel switches to cut off, and that was widespread in the media. This was no longer pilot error. This was now a deliberate act to crash the aircraft. The moment just after takeoff was chosen, knowing full well that there was little altitude and little airspeed to recover. And the Wall Street Journal published an article quoting sources close to the investigation, it says. And the article makes it clear that the sources are, and I quote, familiar with the US officials' early assessment, close quotes. So it doesn't come from the Indian investigation findings. They were listening to the US officials. And the article reports that new details from the black box data and the US officials' early assessments have shifted investigation attention toward the captain of Flight AI-171. The Wall Street Journal cites the fuel control switches both being moved from run to cutoff shortly after liftoff, cutting fuel flow and leading to loss of thrust. The switches were returned to run within about 10 seconds, triggering the 787's automatic restart logic, though they point out the recovery was too late and the flight obviously didn't recover. The Wall Street Journal article cites cockpit voice recordings or descriptions of cockpit voice recordings in which the first officer who was flying the aircraft asks the captain why the switches were moved to cutoff. The captain reportedly replied that he had not done so. And the article also suggests that US aviation experts believe the first officer busy flying the aircraft and during the initial climb would have been less likely to make such a switch change at that critical moment. According to the Wall Street Journal, some US officials believe that beyond a safety mishap, the case may warrant review by criminal investigators to examine whether there was a potential crime element involved. And this is where the criminal investigation started.
Mm. So, whilst many analysts were blaming the captain, we published an episode on the 1st of August 2025 called Water in the EE Bay. Perhaps you can
Yeah,
walk us through that one.
we had already mentioned the FAA airworthiness directives, ADs, to prevent water ingress into the EE Bay back on the 26th of June. And in this episode on the 1st of August, we discussed a further AD 2025-09-12 that was issued in addition to the original AD from 2016 and the Boeing service bulletins from the 6th of March 2024. We also presented a detailed analysis of the ADS-B data and of the CCTV footage. And we concluded the RAT was deployed before the fuel switches were moved to cutoff. We even wrote a letter to the AAIB India requesting clarification of the RAT deployment timings, and we published that letter in the form of an email in the description of the episode. At the time, we received no response from the AAIB India. And we have written a technical memo to accompany that email entitled AI-171 Airspeed and RAT Deployment. We have included both the email and the AAIB, the technical memo we sent them, in the description of today's episode again, so you don't have to go hunt for it in the past archives.
Now, on the 13th of August, we published the Plausible hypothesis, which was followed up on the 20th of August by Not the Captain, and the 5th of September by Probable Cause. So
Yeah.
let's walk through those, Richard.
So what we were doing is simply we laying out our case and the evidence for the probable cause of the Air India crash. Many viewers agreed with our conclusion, and many viewers disagreed with our conclusion. We said there is evidence of multiple failures, and the debate continues. There are key questions like number one, was there an issue already during the takeoff roll? There was visibly slower acceleration and it took longer. Number two, was there an APU lithium ion battery thermal runaway, explosion or fire in the aft EE bay? Was that smoke or was that dust that we saw on takeoff? Number three, was there water ingress into the aft EE bay on rotation? Number four, did the rat deploy before the fuel switches were moved to cutoff? And we've debated all of these issues together with the viewers at length, and I'm sure the debate will carry on. We have pointed out that the pilots were only 2 seconds away from landing on a road and about 20 seconds away from saving the aircraft altogether. So this is a real tragedy, and it was a split-second timing that made the difference between catastrophe and saving the aircraft.
Yeah. So 2 days ago, we published an episode called Deception. The Supreme Court in India has called on the Indian government, the DGCA and the AAIB India to conduct a free, fair, impartial, independent and expeditious investigation. The preliminary report was described by the court as unfortunate and irresponsible, which is a very damning thing for the Supreme Court of India to say. So, Richard, the last word goes to a viewer, Julie Jonas. Richard and Geoffrey, I truly believe that without your channel and especially the preparation and dissemination of your plausible hypothesis that the AI-171 incident would have gone silent. In my opinion, you have kept this issue alive and have, at least in part, forced the powers that be to take a closer look at this investigation. Most aviation channels and sites have already condemned the captain. You guys are fantastic and truly do deserve a medal for the work you have done and the time you have spent. Because of you, maybe there will be some justice in the end. I only wish the pilots could have had a few more seconds to try and save the aircraft. My hat's off to both of you. Very nice comment from Julie.
Yeah, a lovely comment. And we will see what transpires when the Supreme Court reconvenes on the 11th of October. And we'll see what the Indian government and the DGCA and the AAIB in India have to say. I'd also be interested to hear what the NTSB and the AAIB in UK and ICAO have to say about what's going on in India.
It would be also interesting when you mention ICAO, they do an audit of countries' abilities to run their aviation systems, and to find that 3 of the investigators of this air crash are DCGA employees, that is just simply not on. And that is something that should garner attention from ICAO, and they should make a statement about that because that is simply unethical.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, viewers, we're going to be back tomorrow again, focusing on Air India 171. There's a bunch of fabulous questions that you've given us that we need to answer. So, Richard, thank you very much indeed for the work you've done on this today.
You're very welcome.
And viewers, in the description below, you will find a link to our website, 42,000 Feet, with each of those episodes listed, that Richard has listed. Each of those episodes you can go to the ones document and click on any episode you want to look at. So please subscribe to us, please like us, please do keep those wonderful comments coming and keep those fabulous questions coming. And we do look forward to your company tomorrow. Thank you very much.